Hello, my name is Ryan New. I'm the instructional lead for social studies at Jefferson County Public Schools. Today we're going to be looking at the question, how do I lay the foundations for a democratic classroom? The first thing we should do is consider the purpose of social studies, which NCSS defines as the integrated study of the social sciences and humanities to promote civic competence. The primary purpose of social studies, then, is to help young people make informed and reasoned decisions for the public good as citizens of a culturally diverse, democratic society and an interdependent world. In order for us to do this, we should consider the dispositions or principles of developing civic identity. For Principle 1, civic education should build upon students' own experiences with civic life, including daily experiences with civic institutions. Anything that's disconnected from a student's own experience will oftentimes be devalued by students. Principle 2, civic education should provide opportunities for students to consider and discuss key controversies in civic life. Once again, the world does not stop at the school doors. Students are living in the world around them, and they're bringing in those controversies into the classroom. Our job is to figure out how to make sense of this for the students and to be able to put them in situations that allow them to explore these controversies, their histories, and current realities. Principle 3, civic education should build students' skills of discussion, analysis, critique, and research. Democracy demands that its citizens have a free exchange of ideas that are based upon evidence. Our job, K through 12, is to help students develop that type of skill and knowledge to prepare them for those future discussions. Principle 4, civic education should build students' knowledge of their rights and responsibilities as citizens in a way that connects directly to their own concerns. Once again, our classrooms must be representative of the very democracy in which we're trying to prepare our students to become part of. There are different types of citizenship, and it should be noted that when looking at these different types of citizenship, that we oftentimes are not all the same at the same time. You may be a personally responsible citizen in some ways, you may be a participatory citizen in another way, and you may be, depending upon how you view the world, a social justice-oriented citizen in other ways. This can also exist at different types of levels. You might be one way when it comes to local politics, another at the state level, and finally another at the national or international level. It's essential to consider the types of citizens we're trying to prepare students to do. If, as we have done traditionally, we only prepare students to be personally responsible, then we are failing to prepare them to participate or to seek out the root causes of many of the ills in which our students face. It might be good here to pause just to be able to read through many of these different types of descriptions, actions, and core assumptions that make up the different types of citizens that we might prepare our students to become. Once again, the goal is to become all of these in some form or fashion, depending upon the student's level of commitment to a democratic society. Which brings us to the idea of what is the type of mindset? What civic dispositions support democracy? For Jefferson County Public Schools, we have landed on these 6 dispositions: to pursue accuracy and understanding, protect freedoms of self and others, to foster community, engage in democracy, ensure equity and justice, and ultimately promote the common good. The civic identity, the purpose of social studies, and the civic dispositions become some of the foundational level of what is essential in a democratic classroom. Here we see the 4 major components of what social studies means in Jefferson County Public Schools. Dispositions make up the bottom part that really ground us in the understanding. Inquiry becomes a process for being able to translate those dispositions to investigate the world. Argumentation and action ultimately become the products that we want students to produce to show the conclusions and the actions necessary from the inquiries that they make. So here we have a situation where dispositions allow us to see that every student has a mindset, that our democracy is bettered by engaging in discussions to surface and explore how dispositions shape viewpoints and lived experiences. Dispositions are a commitment to individuality and shared humanity. Every student has questions. Our democracy is strengthened and sustained by engaging in the inquiry process to collaboratively investigate compelling questions. Inquiry is a commitment to learning by reasoning together. Every student has a voice. Our democracy is strengthened and sustained by engaging in developing arguments backed with evidence from multiple perspectives that address compelling questions. Argumentation is a commitment to the free exchange of ideas. And ultimately, we want our students to embody action. For every student has agency. Our democracy is strengthened and sustained by engaging in deliberative and democratic processes to challenge inequities, address community needs, promote community improvement and accountability, and champion humane policies at the local, state, national, and international levels. Action is a commitment to participating for the common good. It is these four components of a democratic classroom that we are interweaving throughout all of our curriculum. We have dispositions, or thinking, inquiry, or the process of learning, and ultimately, argument and action, which become the products of those investigations. There are other types of dispositions that help support democracy. One of the ones, just as an example, are the newly adopted principles of Black historical consciousness. On the left-hand side here, you can see these 5 principles really allow us to investigate many of those same civic identities, but through the cultural and reality lens of the Black experience, not just in the United States, but globally. So we have this idea that power, oppression, and racism need to be explored, that agency, resistance, and perseverance need to be explored. Africa and African diaspora, experiences and commonalities needs to be explored. Black joy and love, and ultimately Black contemporary and intersectional historical analysis. And the idea that being able to use principles like this in a classroom allows us to sharpen our view of how we investigate and understand the world around us. So when it comes to teaching with and for democratic classrooms, we have, as we're going to be exploring over the next few videos, several of these different ideas that are bound into one. That at the core of what we have are dispositions. That beyond that becomes inquiry, and the outer circle becomes that which manifests in a way to develop the knowledge, the literacies, the discussion skills, argumentation, and action that we want our students to be engaging in and day out of the classroom. So let's take a look at how this might operate. If you'll notice on the left, these ladders represent the realization of these principles and ideas and skills and dispositions. On the outside rungs, we have essentially inquiry, which is the seafoam green color, and the dark blue color, which are the dispositions. That ideally, all of these ideas would exist moving through K through the 12 experience. What we see on the left side is more of an ideal understanding, that all of them are there strengthened so that the students climbing that ladder have full confidence that each step will be supported. Oftentimes what we see is what we see on the right side. That oftentimes, and especially elementary, social studies is relegated to extra time, if at all. But there are a few champions in elementary, and we need to support them in their understanding that social studies helps us make sense of the social world. And that in elementary, it's not about knowing facts and dates, but developing a sense of self and how that self navigates the world around them. As we're starting to build over time, we'll recognize that the ladder, again, needs lots of support. That what we might build early on needs to be continued throughout the system. And that ultimately our goal in social studies is develop a K-12 coherence, a K-12 scaffold, a vertical alignment that helps build upon each previous step. But it's going to take some time, and that's okay, as we build up these new skills and understandings. But over time, a commitment to those larger ideas will not only better our students, but it will better our democracy as well. So what we have currently is the goal on the left, where all of these blend together in this beautiful array of colors that allow students to just advance up the ladder with great certainty and confidence. But the current reality is much more dire. And the idea that the blue color that you see represents knowledge acquisition, the green represents some maybe discussion, but oftentimes in our classrooms we have no disposition to guide our thinking, and we have no process and inquiry to operationalize that thinking. So ultimately what we're trying to do in our understanding of moving towards and focusing on our efforts, K through 12 in social studies, to make and sustain better citizens for our democracy, we have to balance the understanding of e pluribus unum, the idea from many there is one, and that ultimately the tension comes down to how do you develop the skills and dispositions and experiences of the individual, and at the same time, the skills, dispositions, and experiences of a collective group working towards a common good. These are 4 principles that you're going to see on every single framework. That these, for me, are the 4 non-negotiables when it comes to figuring out what it is that we're trying to do in democratic classrooms. Every human being is of infinite and incalculable value, each a unique intellectual, emotional, physical, spiritual, moral, and creative force, each born free and equal in dignity and rights, endowed with reason and conscience, and deserving then a community of solidarity, a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood, recognition and respect. That is foundational for understanding and moving forward, recognizing both the individual of who they are, the type of identities in which students identify with, and the type of community that we want to create. That we understand that a pluralistic community makes us better off. Because in a democracy, one would expect a commitment to free inquiry, questioning, and participation, a push for access and equity, a curriculum that encouraged independent thought and singular judgment, a standard of full recognition of the humanity of each individual. That our students are unique, and because of their uniqueness, it's going to better us in our understanding and perceptions of the world. Students' perspectives are invaluable to each other, and it's only by reasoning together that we become better off. Democracy, then, is predicated on people's informed and thoughtful engagement in a shared political, economic, and civic life. And the foundations of democratic engagement are built on independent thinking and critical analysis. How do you make the whole better? By empowering the independent thinking and critical analysis and the skills and experiences of our individual students. And ultimately then, by focusing in on what it is that we're trying to create, we're able to create classrooms for democracy, which require problem solving, question asking, and dialogue. Each one speaking with the hope of being heard, each one listening with the possibility of being changed. The classroom then is not preparation for life so much as it is life itself, one of the key understandings of the civic principles we looked at previously. An active process in which everyone, students and teachers, participates together. School has always been and will always be a contested space. This then forms the foundation and true purpose as we seek to understand a shift towards the new Kentucky academic standards for social studies. This session then was about how do I lay the foundations for a democratic classroom. Thank you.